Hi, everyone. It's December 6, 2019. I'm Caleb Dennison. Here's what we've got cooking up on Digital Trends Live. Apple was caught red-handed yesterday as it was revealed by a security expert that iPhone 11 models are doing some naughty things. Randall Field and Joanna Moody of MIT Energy are going to talk to us about modern mobility and where personal transportation is headed. Ciara Pressler is back with our weekly work-life segment, and she's going to help us all keep a little more sane this holiday season. I feel like this segment was made especially for me. And later on, I am particularly excited about this guest, Jack Bishop, which sounds like an international spy's name. He's not actually an international spy that we know of, but actually he's the Chief Creative Officer at America's Test Kitchen, and he's going to talk about how modern technology is changing the way we cook at home. All this and much, much more is coming up right now on Digital Trends Live. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Caleb Dennison for Digital Trends Live. Joining me this morning is none other than Nicole Rennie. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited. We got some interesting topics to cover today.
We do. I want to start off with this iPhone 11 situation because I caught this a little bit later yesterday. Didn't get a chance to look into it until this morning. And on the face of it, it looks like it could be pretty nefarious, but I'm not convinced this is actually a big deal. So the bottom line is a security expert determined that iPhone 11 models were sharing location data even though users had turned that off. So you go in to your settings, turn off location services. The idea is not pinging GPS all the time. But in fact, the iPhone 11 is doing this, whether you turn that off or not. Now, Apple initially kind of, brushed it off and said, well, it's about this whole ultra-wideband thing. It's looking for other ultra-wideband devices. We'll talk about what that means in a second. But later, they kind of backpedaled and said, okay, we're going to change this with an iOS update later on.
And so the annoying thing was that if you were going into specific apps, right, and you would say like, yeah, don't share my location services with this app, don't do it with this app, it wasn't really working like from across the whole device, right? Like you'd have to go in and do like a hard no to everything for the entire device for it not to share your location services. And like you said, it's not really nefarious, but it's kind of annoying, right?
Well, right now, it looks like the only thing that it would be used for is AirDrop. So, looking for other iPhones so that you could do a wireless file transfer or whatever.
And that's what that ultra wideband is, right?
Right, exactly. But there's this anticipated new feature coming out where basically it would fold in tag location. So Tile is actually working on some new little taggers. They have like a super slim credit card sized one that you can put in your wallet. You can attach this to your keys, and ideally you would be able to find your stuff without necessarily using Bluetooth technology. It would be able to use this ultra wideband technology and find your stuff, which sounds really cool. And yes, of course, it would have to actively be looking in order to just kind of do that automatically. But there is an argument in favor of the notion that that should be something that you get to turn on or off and make it like a hard on or off.
Exactly. So if you have an iPhone 11 now, if you want to make sure that your security settings are up to date, you need to go into the actual phone settings, not just do it by an app-by-app basis, but also know that Apple is going to release an update to the OS at some point in the future to make sure that this is all a little bit more clear, because what we kind of like realize is just hazy. Like nobody can really understand like where it ends and where it begins at this point.
Exactly. So Apple, like I said, did a little bit of a backpedal. We're looking for an iOS update to come along and fix this so that it's a little bit more straightforward. For now, if you own an iPhone 11, just understand that it's doing that. But it's not like it's sending your location data everywhere. Apple swears it's not sending any information to its servers about where you're located. I really, the headline makes it look really bad, but I think that this is not such a bad thing. I just wish Apple, when they get confronted with these things, would be forthright the first time.
Yeah,
just be transparent the first time.
You didn't see anything, right? Like this isn't a big deal. And then they go, okay, fine, yeah, it's kind of a deal. We'll fix it, whatever.
Yeah, I think that they say that it's location aware, and it's helps determine if it's in prohibited locations. Whatever. You know what? I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I just think that Apple should be a little bit more forthright to begin with. Now, onto completely different news.
Fun news.
And a little bit more fun. So, as you know, Greg and Riley Wynn are slacking off in Maui right now. They're at what is called
having a horrible time.
They're at the Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit, aka hanging out and talking about cell phones in tropical paradise. It's a rough gig, guys. But there's some really interesting news coming out of there. A lot around 5G, a lot around AI. The new Snapdragon chip is going to open up a whole bunch of new stuff. But in among this, they announced that they have a new AR platform that they are launching. I think it's called XR2. And right after they made that announcement, Niantic, which you might know as the company that made Pokemon Go, which of course was absolutely huge when it first came out, they've announced that they are going to be partnering up with Qualcomm to make AR glasses. Now, I personally consider this a big deal because Pokemon Go is probably the most widely used AR feature that has ever been put out there. I mean, you remember people walking around with their head in their phone.
People still do it. I see people all the time still walking around. Granted, maybe those kinds of like group masses wandering in a park aren't there anymore, but when this is eventually released, I think we're going to see an uptick again. And Niantic is working on Harry Potter Wizards Unite as well, which is going to be so much fun. And can you just picture like tons of people wearing these glasses, walking around the park, interacting with things that like bystanders can't see?
It'll look a little bit more natural than having your phone up in front of your face. Will it be a little more social? I don't know. Will people still walk off of cliffs? I hope not. But you know, this is actually kind of a big deal because Niantic has kind of been handcuffed by smartphone technology up until this point. The idea is that they're going to, you know, be able to bundle 5G along with AI. Everything's going to be super fast. The spec for the glasses is like 3K screens right in front of your eyes, which should eliminate, you know, pixelization, should look legit, right? And then up to 90 frames per second, which is super fast. So it should look really smooth, really natural. And honestly, I think this is probably the most fun application of AR that I've heard about so far.
And so we don't really have a date on when these are going to be released, though. So they've just been announced. They're being teased. We can expect it to kind of, I'm going to assume, kind of like be associated with the upcoming game at some point.
Right.
But we don't really have a hard date about when we can expect them. We're just hoping soon.
Well, Niantic is at the forefront of AR. Qualcomm is making AR possible with its new platform and the new chips that it's using. So I think this might be like the big leap forward that we've been looking for. I mean, Microsoft has been working on HoloLens for quite some time, but you know, when this actually comes to the masses has been kind of up in the air. Now I feel like we have kind of a clear indication that it really is right around the corner. Whether that corner is a year long or more, we don't really know, but I'm hoping like by this time next year, we might be seeing those as like a holiday gift possibility.
Would you use them?
I would totally check them out. Yeah. I'm not so big on like the Snap goggles. Those, I don't know. I don't see those as practical. You know, we ran a story the other day about how Snap and Gucci got together and created these really crazy looking specs. And you know, you can make you know, 3D AR films with them, which sounds fun. But like games and then actual like, I need to fix this thing. Here's like the on-screen, in-my-face instructions as I'm working on it.
I think that's what I'm most excited about. Like games are obviously going to be cool. I think the reason why the Snap goggles aren't that great is because it's just more of like a social media sharing experience.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to be like a little bit more selfish and wanting to share something like that with other people. But the game is like something else coming to you, like something like another product in a way that you've never seen it before, like right in front of your face.
And it doesn't have to be just games. It can be any number of different things. I think this is like I said, this is the big leap forward that I personally have been waiting for. So we're going to definitely be following this story as it develops over the next months. Hopefully not much more than a year. We'll see. Now I want to switch to another topic that's a little bit more sobering, not quite as fun, but very important nonetheless. A recent report came out that indicates that there were over 3,000 reports of sexual assault that took place in Uber rides, just Uber rides in the U.S. in the year 2018, which obviously is a very disturbing number. I think anecdotally we're all aware that this can happen. Uber has been trying to up its game and give its riders an out, not just its riders, but also its drivers. We'll talk about that more in a second. But I mean, Nicole, when you read this story, what was your first reaction? What do you think about this?
Well, I think it was kind of interesting because the numbers seemed a little bit like out of context. I wasn't really sure what to do with them, right?
Right.
Because obviously 3,045 reports of sexual assault is a huge number, and it's something it's a really powerful number too. But at the same time, Uber's safety report indicated that is like 99.9% of rides in 2017 and 2018 didn't have reports of sexual assault. So I think it's just really important to consider that in context because it's still a really big number and we need to do something about it. But
0.1%, I mean, you're right. The context of this is out of all those billions of rides, 1.3 billion, I think, in 2018, 3,045 is a relatively low number. But let's be honest, like the assault shouldn't be happening at all.
Exactly.
And I want to talk about this a little bit. I personally, sort of gut instinct is to think of this as the driver assaulting the rider. But according to this report, it's evenly matched.
Yeah.
In many cases, it's actually the rider that's, assaulting the driver.
And some of the instances reported were between two different riders in the vehicle. So Uber's report said, our data shows that drivers report assaults at roughly the same rate as riders across the 5 most serious categories of sexual assault. So they didn't really go into detail into like what those different categories are, but it's really important to note that a lot of these reports are happening between all the persons in the vehicle,
right?
Not just riders preying on, drivers preying on riders. It just raises, I think, more concerns about safety, but I think Uber is trying to do as much as it can within the app. Like the, I'm blanking on the name right now, but there is kind of like an alarm button that you can press.
It's sort of a panic button, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get some notifications sometimes. So if like Uber realizes that you're somewhere on the route, if your car is stopped for no reason, it'll sort of like check in with you. Mm-hmm. But I'd be curious to see what more Uber can do for riders and drivers now that this data is widely available. And it's really interesting too because this is Uber's first ever safety report. This is the first time that they've ever announced something like this.
And it's just Uber too.
Yes.
There's lots of other ride-sharing apps out there, and I am certain that this is an issue across all of those. I mean, Uber just happens to have this report out, so we're focusing on that particular brand, that particular ride-sharing app, but this is an issue across all of them. So obviously the total number in the U.S. of incidences happening in a ride-share is probably much higher than 3,045, which is unfortunate. I just want to ask you, what do you think the difference is between what's happening with these ride-sharing services and what happened back when we just took taxis?
I think part of it is the intimacy of an Uber ride or like any sort of like shared ride. Like you're in somebody's car, that's their space. They're a lot more comfortable, I think, sometimes. There's a little bit more of like a casual interaction that happens because a taxi is like, it's kind of it's a company vehicle. This is somebody's like job. There's rules and things like that. A lot of times, or sometimes, depending on the city, there can be sort of like barriers or separations between you and the driver.
Literally, the big old plexiglass separator.
And so it's way different when you're getting into somebody's car. It's also kind of there's kind of like a weird sort of, nobody really tells you, like in a taxi, you always get in the back. And in Uber, do I sit in the front with somebody? Do I sit in the back away from the driver? Yeah. Just those lines, like even just like us as a society, like we haven't defined what the strict rules are whenever you're getting into a shared ride service. Right. So I think it's really just that intimacy level already. Like it's way more intimate than a taxi drive. So
great point.
It just kind of opens up. And people use it way more now for rides where alcohol's involved. I think taxis, people still took taxis when they were drinking maybe, but it was also really expensive. Yeah. So now that since the cost is lower, that barrier to entry is a lot lower. So
more people are doing it.
Yeah, more people get Ubers or get Lyfts when they're drunk.
You make a really great point, and your boy Sam Slaughter just pointed out in the comments section as well. We were going to get to this truthfully, Sam, but you make a great point. This report doesn't include the issues that weren't reported.
Exactly.
People who aren't comfortable, whether it's drivers or riders, making that report. So it's possible the number is actually a bit higher. Uber's quick to point out that it's a relatively low percentage, but how many instances do they not know about is another big question.
Yeah. I think the Uber CEO posted on Twitter like a really good kind of wrap up. She said, I suspect many people will be surprised at how rare these are. Others will think they're still too common. And she goes on, but she basically says they're all right. It's It's less than maybe we were expecting. It's way more than it should be. Everybody's right, and hopefully Uber will do some more about it.
Agreed. Well, that's a really important topic, but we do have one more story to go through, a ride situation of a different sort. Turns out that Tesla's new rides could be coming out sooner than we expected. And I'm not talking about the CyberTruck, which I feel like has just railroaded all coverage for electric vehicles. It might be easy to forget that there is a Tesla Model Y, a little crossover SUV type guy. And what happened to that? Where is it? We're still waiting for it.
It's literally probably the exact opposite of the CyberTruck at this point. The Tesla Y is going to be like a lot smaller, a crossover option. It's supposed to be more affordable. It's supposed to be more family friendly. It's supposed to be a little bit more practical. So originally Elon Musk was saying, yeah, we're going to expect it to kind of roll out in summer 2020. But now CNBC reported, based on an analysis from Deutsche Bank, that it could come as early as the first quarter of 2020, so maybe early spring. And that's based on the fact that Tesla was sort of asking from some of its part producers in Taiwan to get them a lot faster. So they're trying to pump this guy out probably as soon as they possibly can. So that would be pretty interesting, because it is going to be sort of that like entry-level Tesla, I think. Originally, that was the Tesla 3, but now it's going to be the Tesla Y. So we don't really know what the demand is, though, on the Tesla Y, because Tesla didn't really share the pre-order numbers.
They sure did for the Cybertruck.
Yeah,
though.
we know, or supposedly over 250,000 people ordered the Cybertruck, and according to Electric, the site, that timeline might have been moved up too, because originally everything was kind of like, production will be like ready or done by late 2022. But now they know, or Tesla released the numbers saying that the tri-motor and the dual motor all-wheel drive, which are like the fancier options of the Cybertruck, might come as early as late 2021, because more people put their name down for those two models.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, because, you know, Elon Musk has in the past come out and said it's coming this time. I think the last thing he said was summer of 2020, as you mentioned before. Could be a little bit earlier, which would be good for Tesla, because historically they've had trouble producing these. I think that we may see the first Model Ys rolling out if we're lucky in spring of 2020, but how many of them will actually be rolling out is the big question. And then with the experience of producing this most recent Model Y, are they going to learn, are they going to get better and cough up the Cybertruck a little bit faster?
That's what I'm kind of wondering right now, because as cool as the Cybertruck, well, I mean, I guess it's kind of a love or hate it design, but obviously a lot of people love it. A lot of people also hate it. But the Model Y, moving up that production might just like fund the production of the Cybertruck later down the road. But honestly, I'm more excited about the Model Y, because I think that
it's more practical for more people.
It's more practical, and it's way cheaper. I mean, I think the starting price for the Cybertruck was like $40K, and that's just like the low-end model. So I think that the Model Y is going to have hopefully a bigger impact on people if, like you mentioned before, if Tesla can deliver, since that has been kind of an issue in the past. Elon Musk likes to say a lot of things, but whether or not the company can deliver on that is a whole nother matter.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how that plays out. It'll be very interesting. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I believe we're going to be checking out. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with Randall Field and Joanna Moody of MIT about their mobility for the future and that study of transportation in 2050 and what that might look like. But first, Riley Wynn and Greg Nibbler wrap up day 3 from the Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit in Maui, giving you the latest updates on what's expected from the 5G rollout in 2020. Everybody's talking about this. So stick around, and we'll be right back with more Digital Trends Live.
Greg Nibbler with Digital Trends here with Riley Wynn in Maui for the Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit, where we're talking about all things 5G, AI, and cutting-edge technology. And after day 3, we're going to walk through our top 5 highlights. Number 1, the release of the XR2 5G chip. So let's walk through what that means. So XR is essentially Qualcomm's standard for processing virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. All of those amazing things that we've been looking forward to need a lot of processing power. And now what they've done is paired what they already had with 5G, and that's what that XR2 5G chip is. It's going to enable us to do all kinds of things. One of the things they even mentioned was eventually we're not even going to have to use our phones as much as we'll have augmented reality glasses.
Yes.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Google Glass, like what, 5-6 years ago? Now Qualcomm's actually gonna make it happen. Like, we're actually gonna be able to live in this world where we're walking around and we have like little things going in front of our eyes. We have information being sent to us. It's crazy. Like, it's so futuristic. I'm geeking out.
Yeah, it's exciting. The possibilities are just so great. And what they were saying, they even framed it as, instead of a heads down society, because we all look at our phones, I'm guilty, it'd be a heads up society because everything would be on our glasses as we go through. And it would pair with your phone and processing 5G so that you would not have any of that latency. You could process all that information really quickly, having something overlaid. You're walking on vacation, you know, and you get something instant
information.
You get
directions.
Right there. Directions.
We're in Hawaii. We don't really know where we're going that well.
We do not. We could
it would
get
be
lost.
right here.
We get lost all the time. We need the AR glasses. So this is something, again, that is really great. And so that's just walking through what some of these highlights are. That's the XR2 5G chip. And that's kind of the basis for a lot of what we're talking about here on day 3 when it comes to the highlights, is just this such fun future world that's almost at our fingertips. So that's the first one. So XR2 5G. Number 2, XR is going to make VR better. This is another really exciting development. So virtual reality has been around for a while, but unless you have a really high-end system that can compute a lot of data, it's not necessarily the greatest experience.
No, it's not. One thing that I really liked about the XR2 chip, what it's going to be able to do is these headsets, these VR headsets, when you're in them, you are literally enclosed in that reality, in that world. Well, now they're going to be able to have sensors on the outside. So the example they showed was, you know, your kid's crying in the other room and you're stuck playing whatever game. You'll be able to hear that now and actually be like, oh, the real world is still there. I gotta go check on my kid. Like, I mean, that's crazy, because I've done a virtual reality experience with other people where we are moving around, and we didn't have these sensors in those VR headsets. So we actually ran into each other a couple times, and we had really expensive equipment on, so we were really nervous about it. And you're not gonna have that anymore.
No, with this processing power, I mean, one of the things you brought up, the cameras, and they said it's gonna be strong enough that it can run 7 concurrent cameras on one headset at the same time.
It's insane.
That means you would have everything around you. You could really cover everything. They also had one that was pointing back just to read eyesight. So the abilities that you're going to have with that are pretty incredible. Some of the statistics, they said that they could even facilitate 8K at 60 frames per second within virtual reality. On top of that, 120 hertz refresh rates. That means 0 latency, like seamless experience that we've been wanting for so long, and it's all going to be because of these chips. And on top of that, you won't need that giant computing rig anymore necessarily. I mean, you can actually do it all with these 5G chips.
Yeah, it's insane. The one thing they talked about was you will sometimes need that really expensive laptop if you really want to do crazy gaming, but the level in which you are going to experience good VR is going to come down. It's going to be a lot more mainstream. It's not going to be for the really avid gamer, the people that are really into it.
Right.
Casual people will be able to get into it. So.
Right, and that's one of the advantages of this chip. So again, VR is going to get better. let's talk about AR. AR in our work life is going to improve our lives. So here's what I'm talking about with this. So augmented reality is something, again, that's been around for a while, but think about it helping us out. So with augmented reality, some of the examples that they gave were, one was from a company called Sempra Energy. And for their employees, they go out and they actually work on power lines, like dangerous things,
Yeah.
you know, that you could actually hurt yourself. This is why I would never be allowed near them. But with that, what they do is they put on augmented reality glasses, and then they're able to see what is safe, what is not. They use that, and they use some VR as well, but it's like all understanding and seeing it in real time and understanding what that environment means and having that assistance of a glass overlaying it in real time with no latency at all.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with power lines, hot lines, non-hot lines,
Right.
don't want to risk it.
No.
So technology can help with that. Another industry that technology is helping and this AR is helping is working on cars.
Right.
Greg, I don't know if you knew this, but every car is different in the way you have to take it apart and repair it. I had no idea.
Yeah,
Did you?
no, I've tried to repair my car, and it's not a good look.
Yeah, so with these AR glasses, they're actually able to implement the driver's manual to the mechanic so they don't have to go back and look at it or go online and look for how you're supposed to take off the battery, the hood, things like that. And so it's gonna make working and repairing cars a lot more efficient, because one of the most expensive things when you get your car repaired is labor. So it's gonna save us money in the end, so.
Right,
Cool.
save us money, it'll be safer for people to use, and on top of that, one of the other things that they showcased too, and just, you know, talking about what the potential is of this technology, was the idea that you could even have a virtual assistant pop up. If you're wearing
Love
these
that.
glasses, be like, hey, I need some help here, and just have somebody show up and tell you what to do or what not to do, or walk you through whatever the process is, and it's just gonna be safer for people, it's gonna be more efficient, it's gonna be cheaper, like you said,
Yeah.
and all because of the power of these XR2 chips harnessing 5G. I mean, just one more example of 5G actually being really amazing.
Yeah, in the future, we're all gonna be Tony Stark with our own Jarvis.
That's okay. I kind of like that idea. Okay, let's go on to number 4. Number 4 highlight, and this was really amazing. Pretty soon, we're going to be able to have holographic meetings at work. Let's talk about this demo that we got to see. So it's a company
I'm
called...
super jealous, by the way.
I know. I was waiting for that. It was really weird, but it was really amazing. So let's talk about it. So there's a company called Spatial, and we actually got to talk to the 2 co-founders, and they did a demonstration of how they view the future of things like Slack or workplace communication, but over long distances using 5G. So right now, you can do somewhat of a virtual meeting, but it's usually really slow. You all have to be on the same software, the same device. This cuts through all of that into cross-platform communication. What they showcased were 4 different people. One was on like a HoloLens, one was on some kind of a VR headset, one had an augmented reality headset, and one had a phone.
Yes, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
The guy who was walking around with his phone, because like you think of VR and like other AR headsets, like that's super high tech.
Yeah.
But you just pull out your iPhone and then you can also experience these new worlds, these new meetings essentially.
Right.
I was just like, what the heck?
Yeah.
This is awesome.
It was amazing. I've never seen anything like this, and it's all these different platforms that, again, you know, like you said, you wouldn't think would be compatible, but they were all compatible, and so all these different people met from all over the place. I don't even know where 2 of them were. I don't even think they were.
Oh yeah,
here
I didn't
in
even think
Maui.
about that.
Yeah.
When I was watching the screen, there
Nope.
was more than just the guys that were in the room.
They might have been in New York. I don't even know where, and they were all meeting in this virtual space. And on top of that, since I did get to experience it, I can say it a little bit. It's really interesting. Like, you get to manipulate the environment. So they showcase like working on a painting or working on some kind of design. You can all have a hand in it, a virtual hand in it. And this is all because of this software powering that. And it's because, again, going back to 5G, cutting out that latency and that quick speed to process all that data. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was also amazing how quickly they made your avatar.
Yeah, that was weird.
So they got a picture of Greg from online like the day before and made his avatar. So when he was in the virtual world, it was funny too. Like, it looked a lot like you. It really
know,
did.
it was
It's
really
posture
weird.
though. The posture was like, you
Posture was
need
strange.
better posture like that though.
Okay, they need to be like this. Dang it. All right.
It did look like you though. It was very realistic.
No, it was really fascinating. So that's all part of what Spatial is doing. And again, to have these holographic meetings and bringing people together. And they talked about how they're using this to take on not only just, you know, to make people connect easier, to make that connection a lot easier, but also to take on business travel. So non-essential business travel, if somebody's got to fly back and forth in a day, well, now you may not necessarily have to do that. You could still collaborate with people and work from realistically, wherever you want. So that was number 4, talking about that in the future of holographic meetings in the workplace.
That's such a weird word.
It really is.
I love it.
All right, number 5 highlight that we want to talk about, and this is actually another amazing thing as far as working wherever you want. It's that 5G is going to make mobile computing possible. So let's explain what that means. So we're talking about using your laptop and having it 5G enabled. Now, we've heard about this being done before. I think Lenovo did something actually with Qualcomm earlier this year. But this now is something that they're going to be able to bring out to a lot more computers, to where you'll have 5G connections on your laptop. That means all of the advantages that you get with 5G, all that really rapid data downloading and lack of latency. Again, I keep talking about that, but the refresh rate, all of that stuff, because of 5G, will be in your laptop.
Yeah, to experience that stuff in the past, you had to have a real beefy computer. It was a workstation.
Right.
You're spending $1,000 plus. Well, Snapdragon is going to bring that down, bring that price point down to $300. And you're going to be able to experience 5G. That's crazy, a $300 laptop, 5G enabled.
And that's what they want to bring this out to. They're bringing it out to other tiers, because even when we were talking to them, they were, usually that's like a premium thing.
Yeah,
when
of
you
course.
Think about 5G.
Yeah.
That's a premium experience. But as more of it rolls out, the price goes down and the accessibility goes up. Riley, you could be on the beach, making TikTok videos, and
you had to do that. Didn't you?
I had to do it. You called out my posture. I had to do that. So making your TikTok videos on the beach, and then, but because of 5G, making commuting easy and computing faster. That was our number 5 highlight. And there's been so many highlights from this experience, from what Qualcomm is doing at this event. It's really been an insight to the future of technology that's happening right now. Like, we are on the verge of so many amazing things, and it's so fun to talk about it and share that experience with you. And if you want to find out more about anything that we've been talking about this week, we've got a lot of interviews that have gone up. We've got some other highlights from each day has been something completely different. It's been just such an amazing experience. And we want you to know about it.
Yeah, 2020 is going to be the year of 5G. There's going to be a lot of breakthroughs in this next year, and I just can't wait.
Yeah, and it's going to be changing really quick. And the best way to stay on top of it, all this cutting edge technology, is to go to digitaltrends.com.
Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Caleb Dennison, and I'm extremely excited to welcome our next 2 guests, because I'm hoping that they can clear up some serious confusion that I personally have about where personal mobility is going in the future. Randall Field is the Executive Director of the Mobility of the Future Study and the Mobility Systems Center at the MIT Energy Initiative, and Joanna Moody is Research Program Manager of the Mobility Systems Center at the MIT Energy Initiative and a coordinating author of the Insights into Future Mobility Report. And it is that Insights into Future Mobility Report that I want to talk about. First of all, Randall and Joanna, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being here today.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. So here at Digital Trends, especially in our podcast, we talk a lot about autonomous vehicle technology, the various different tiers you have of autonomous vehicles. We look at alternative fuel sources like, electric vehicles as well as hydrogen fuel cells. Then we take a look at things like infrastructure, our roads and is the technological infrastructure coming fast enough to support this stuff? And then it gets really deep when you start looking at like the policy around this stuff, how the government gets involved. And so we look at all of this, and it's really hard to paint a picture of what the future might actually look like, because we're taking a very unscientific approach to it, frankly. From what I can tell with your study, you guys did that scientifically based analysis of where we're going and what things are going to look like from 2020 to 2050. Can you tell me about some of the key takeaways from this report that you guys created?
Sure, yes. In fact, our analysis, we looked at the technology, we looked at policy making and how that affects things, as well as human behavior, human preferences, all come into play in this very complex impact on future mobility. So we looked at many different aspects of mobility systems, and we looked at issues of climate policy and recognized that climate policy affects transportation and many other sectors of the economy, including the generation of electricity. And we recognize that that the ability to deal with climate change is, that we can deal with climate change with policies while still enabling the economy to grow very well, very robustly, with the global economy increasing by more than 140% between the year 2050 and 2050. Even if you have these various climate policies that keep us on track for 2 degrees C temperature rise. So that's one aspect of the work. We also looked at human behavior, and I'll let Joanna speak to that.
Sure. Yeah, so you touched on a lot of different things, and our report touches on a lot of these as well. So alternative fuel vehicles, policies looking at how they support the adoption and the sort of rapid adoption of those vehicles and what that might mean for personal mobility out into the future. But one of the things that I think is surprising from maybe an MIT study is that we look a lot more, not just at the technology, but also how they interact with human behaviors, existing systems, and how people are going to adopt these technologies. And that's really what matters when you're talking about how an individual is going to get where they need to go on a day-to-day basis now and in the future. And so one of the things that we look at is we do a deep dive into urban mobility. So understanding that populations are growing around the world, but that the greatest growth is going to be in cities, and that these are the transportation systems that are already being plagued by congestion, traffic, local air pollution, and are also contributing significantly to the global climate. And so one of the things that we look at is what are the potential solutions for personal mobility in these urban spaces.
So when you talk about, people's attitudes toward the changing paradigm of transportation, did you find that people are still a little bit reluctant to divorce themselves from fossil fuel-based fuels, or are they starting to embrace the idea of moving over to electric vehicles or perhaps even hydrogen fuel cell vehicles?
Yes. So there's a number of pieces there, and I'll start, and then I'll let Randy talk a little bit more about the alternative fuel vehicle side of that question. But just from one of the things to think about is just what is our reliance on cars as a mode, regardless of whether they're autonomous, regardless of whether they're electric or hydrogen fuel cells, and what that means for our transportation systems. And so one of the things that we look at is how people are attached to their personal vehicles, how they attach social status and their personal image as sort of the symbolic value to owning and using a car, and how that can be a barrier to promoting more sustainable systems, particularly when you're looking at urban transportation systems. And the other piece of that is we look at whether there are any generational differences in sort of preferences for car ownership and use. So there's been a lot of sort of headlines out there that the millennial generation is killing the car industry, that they're not buying cars, they're not using cars nearly as much as previous generations. So one of the analyses that our research group looked at was, is this explained by differences in sort of the socioeconomic or sort of the environment in which millennials find themselves? Or is this really an inherent difference in preference? Is it that these people really just don't want to own a car and they don't want to drive a car for environmental reasons or for other reasons? Or is it that they're where they are in their career, where they are in their life in terms of getting married, having kids, moving to the suburbs? Is that what is explaining this difference? And what we found is that when you control for things like income, job, education, where you live, that there is no difference in preference between millennials and previous generations. And we're able to do this using really long-term trends in data from the National Household Travel Survey in the United States.
That is interesting and a little bit surprising, because I think anecdotally I would have just assumed that millennials who feel very strongly about the effects of climate change and doing what they can to combat that might be making decisions about whether or not to own a vehicle based on that. And your report found that that really wasn't the case.
Well, what we found is that that might be a group of individuals, but when you're talking about the entire generation of millennials, and you're talking about it in the entire country of the United States, that a lot of those things are explained away when you look at sort of the fact that millennials are getting married later, they're getting into stable jobs later, they have student loan debt and other sort of financial pressures that make car affordability early on a more difficult thing. They have kids later, and often when you have a kid, that is sort of one of the main pressures of needing a car. And so when you look at these other trends, that can start to explain some of these differences. And that often those sort of pressures from lifestyle are going to trump or sort of outweigh these sort of more preference or sort of environmental concerns.
Got it. You guys, we're running out of time. There's so much here to unpack. I'm going to encourage our viewers and our readers to check out this report, because what I'm hearing here is really fascinating. I have one final question I want to sneak in really quick, and it's around infrastructure. What did you find? How are we doing in preparing for charging vehicles, fueling hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, building the infrastructure needed that would support autonomous vehicle technology? What's our pace? Are we on track to move quickly, or are we going to be waiting for a while?
Okay, the issue of infrastructure is very important, because as people are making a decision about owning an electric vehicle versus a conventional vehicle, the issue becomes cost to purchase, and then cost to operate, and then of course the issue of range anxiety. And if you don't have the infrastructure out there to enable people to, first of all, see that the infrastructure exists and to conveniently recharge, refuel when they're on the road and when they want to get to some places beyond the traditional range, if that doesn't exist, then the willingness of people to purchase those vehicles will be very much limited. So to your question, are we on track? Well, basically what we are at today is a very small penetration of electric vehicles in the overall market. It's been growing tremendously, but if you want to get out there to 50% penetration in the future, you're going to need far more infrastructure than you have today. You need to, of course, recognize that today most people charge at home because the people who currently own these vehicles have that garage or have that space to charge. But as you go to higher penetrations, you're going to have more and more of the population who may not have that ability to charge at home. And those people are going to need to know where they're going to charge out in a public location, whether it be at the grocery store, at the mall, or along the highway.
I got it. Well, you guys, sorry we ran out of time. There's so much more to unpack here. What an interesting report that you guys have created. Thank you for sharing the information with us and being with us here on Digital Trends Live.
Thank you.
That's Randall and Joanna with the MIT Energy Initiative. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, Ciara Pressler is back with us for another work-life discussion that you don't want to miss. She's going to help us get through the holidays with a little more sanity than we normally do. I, for one, know I could use some big help here. So stick around. Digital Trends Live will be right back. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I am Caleb Dennison here with Ciara Pressler, and it's time for our work-life segment. Thank you for joining us again. Appreciate it.
This is too important. We have a huge topic today that we all need some help with.
Absolutely. Holiday sanity is something that I personally struggle with, so I can't wait to get into this. You had people send in questions, and what did you find?
Well, let's find out what the question is for today.
Okay, so I need some help. I'm feeling very, very overwhelmed between my work life and all of these different holiday parties that are coming up and getting gifts for family and running around trying to get my house ready for guests. How am I supposed to combat my work life in between personal life? Help. How do I do this?
Yes, this is a classic work-life conundrum because the holidays are crazy at work because you're at the end of the year, end of your deadlines
Big
to hit.
pushes, yeah.
And then all these extra things are happening. There's a lot of clutter, right?
Yeah. Well, holiday parties, you're trying to get things wrapped up for the end of the year. You're looking at the next year, staring it down, and there's all this other stuff happening at home at the same time.
Exactly. I find there's a lot of sensory overload. Like everywhere you go, there's like flashing lights. There's a lot more stuff in the stores and even in the lobby of your office building.
Yeah.
There's like more things. And so just to keep your mind clear is a lot of extra effort.
It's especially difficult. So, I mean, what do you do about that? How can you handle some of this stuff?
Well, here are a few things I'm doing this year and that I recommend for other people as well. First is to say no. Say no to more things. You don't have to do everything, especially all of those social invites, holiday parties. If you're not really into it, you don't have to go.
You don't have to go.
Yeah.
I feel empowered already because I'm definitely one of these people who just tends to say yes. You know, they're very gracious about extending the invitation. Mm-hmm. How could I possibly decline? But that's really, it's okay. I mean, is the notion there that other people understand, yeah, it's a busy time. If you can't make it, it's not the end of the world?
Yeah, and you don't have to give a reason. No is a complete sentence. Mm-hmm. If you don't feel like a spark of excitement when you get that invitation, maybe you just don't really want to go. Don't feel obligated.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? What about the pressure around gift giving at this time of year? Yes. You know, you do a lot of travel. There's a lot of logistics that can get complicated there. How do you handle that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, with gift giving, I got my family to agree on no gift exchange this year,
wow.
which is unprecedented. I'm very excited about that. But when I am giving gifts, what I do is I make it into a game. Of mm-hmm. course, I'm all about that game theory. So how can you maybe, I would buy all my presents from one neighborhood, or maybe try to only shop local for this season, or try to get it all done in a day at the same shopping center, or all on a weeknight online. So you don't have to find the very perfect gift. It's just about getting it done sometimes and being good enough, and that's okay. Gifts can also be things other than things, right? So what we've been talking a lot at pregame in our business coaching groups this week are what are the other ways you can appreciate people? Sometimes it's a handwritten note. Sometimes it's waiting until the new year when some of the clutter has left to appreciate people. Mm-hmm. Doing that holiday party.
What about, we talk about this a lot in Digital Trends and how we're moving away from like objects, things, mm-hmm. and more toward like experiences.
Absolutely.
How can you utilize that, you know, during the holiday time to, you know, express gratitude or appreciation?
Yes, so since we're not doing gifts, my mom and I are going to the Portland Gay Men's Chorus show tonight, mm-hmm. and that's valuable time together. That's making memories. That's more valuable than a sweater or a scarf. For business, same thing. You know, the thing that gets me through the holidays every year is that I have an annual New Year's goal-setting brunch, do it in multiple cities, and this will be the 9th year we've done it, and that's a way to get everybody motivated for the new year, and that's a massive gift. It's better than a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the Gay Men's Chorus concert. I'm a professional trumpet player, and so after all of this, I get up 5 in the morning. You know, we do this show, work all day, and then I head over to the church and play this big Christmas program with an orchestra. It's a lot of fun, and I love doing it. But you know what? I'm not sleeping, and I think that a lack of rest is definitely pulling me down this holiday season. Have you found that to be true kind of across the board?
Well, I really used that 4-day weekend over Thanksgiving to rest and recover. And I better get an invite to your concert because
Absolutely.
I love that you play trumpet.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
absolutely. I'll tell you
Yes.
about it after this segment. Yeah.
All right, yeah. But think about those activities you've committed to. Are you really getting joy from them? And I love to use those other like cleaning out tactics. Clutter Busting is an amazing book that I absolutely love. And of course, there's the Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And they both have some great tips for getting rid of stuff. But another great thing to do in December is to get rid of activities, people, commitments that just aren't serving you anymore. So if you're getting joy from it and it's great, awesome, keep going. You can catch up on sleep later, but say no to some other stuff so you can get that sleep that you need.
I love the idea of getting rid of stuff. In fact, in my own household, we have this rule. If something comes in, then something has to go out.
That's a hard one.
It's a really, really hard one, but it's amazing what you find when you start looking for something and you start asking yourself the hard question, do I really need this? When was the last time I used this? Is this important? You know? But I'd never thought about also kind of getting rid of, people and other things
And
that might be kind of, cluttering things up.
Absolutely. And, it's the same concept of doing a digital detox, which is great to do on a holiday, or maybe doing a few days without television. I love television, but, it's interesting to just be kind of quiet. Of course, there's those great apps out there like Calm and Headspace that also help you grab 5-10 minutes of sanity.
I heard that there's these things called books.
What?
Yeah. Have you heard of this?
I actually joined my local library last month.
Did you really?
Yes, I'm going super old school. I got print books.
Yes.
Went off of the digital because, of course, then I'm still changing screens and browsers. But yeah, I've been reading a paper book.
Holding that book in your hand, that is just, I don't know, it's kind of cathartic. It's relaxing and a great alternative to holiday movies. As much as we love them, as much as we love Disney Plus being out right now and being able to watch all the Disney, you don't have to. Like, calm down. Shut your binge down, maybe, and open a book.
I love it. Yeah, screens everywhere, books, great alternative. I've also been doing some art just as a hobby.
Yes.
Music, a little karaoke, never hurt anyone.
All right, fantastic. Any parting thoughts that you have for us before we go?
Well, I would love for you guys to check out my goal brunch. We're going to have one in Portland, one in New York, and we're adding some other cities. So if you need some motivation for the new year, in January, I will be on tour. You can go to pregamehq.com/goalbrunch for details.
Fantastic. Ciara Pressler helping us get through the holiday season with a little bit more sanity on our side. Very valuable this time of year. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Brad Wiskirchen is the CEO of Kount. He's going to dish up some extremely valuable info about digital fraud and how AI could help prevent being taken advantage of. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Caleb Dennison, and joining me right now is Brad Wiskirchen. He's the CEO at Kount, and we're going to talk a little bit about a growing problem, digital fraud. And believe me when I say that the problem seems to be getting worse and more advanced, but new tools are emerging to help combat that. So welcome to the program, Brad. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Caleb.
It seems like there's quite a bit to unpack here. First of all, I was surprised to learn that loyalty program fraud was a thing and that it's actually growing. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is? Because it sounds like, you know, my frequent shopper card is at risk or something, but I'm not sure that's quite the case.
Well, actually, it is a rapidly growing sector in fraud. We have a lot of clients that have loyalty points and loyalty cards. And what they're experiencing is as fraudsters become more and more adept at leveraging individuals' personas, and as they're becoming more and more adept at hacking people's accounts, they're able to convert loyalty points to perhaps gift cards, et cetera, and monetize those very quickly. So we've been, frankly, inundated over the course of the last several months with clients who've been historically brick and mortar stores who've been migrating towards the digital environment with their end consumers, who've been experiencing tremendous losses because as they've gone through that migration, they've ended up experiencing new types of new fraud vectors that they'd never seen before. So unfortunately, fraud is a growth industry.
That is disturbing to hear, especially about the loyalty program fraud. Do you see an uptick in these fraud cases as we move through the holiday season?
You know, the fraudsters don't take holiday vacations, and they don't take the same breaks. They're not on any seasonal schedule, so not necessarily. We see this pretty much consistently throughout the course of the year. What we do see is obviously an increase in the number of transactions that people are engaged in and that the merchants that we protect are experiencing. So, but as far as the amount of the fraud, it's probably pretty evenly distributed throughout the course of the year.
So how do you track this stuff? How do you detect it and protect your clients and you know, stave this off before it happens or catch it in the act?
Actually, we leverage artificial intelligence to do that. It would be impossible to do it without the use of artificial intelligence. We've been engaged in unsupervised machine learning for over 10 years. Many years ago, we also started implementing supervised machine learning, and over the course of the last year, we launched True AI solution, an OmniScore, which leverages the supervised and unsupervised machine learnings that we gain from each transaction that we see. And we see transactions from over 180 countries on any given day. We protect over 6,500 brands globally. And because of all the data that we collect and create in protecting these brands, we're able to effectively come up with the same conclusion that a human would come up with, leveraging the same data. But we're able to do it with a round trip time of under 250 milliseconds, no matter where someone is in the globe.
Wow, so, that's fast.
Yeah, faster than the human eye can blink.
Yeah, that's incredible. I suppose you would need that kind of fast processing to go through that much data, and especially with such a vast client list as your own. I can barely wrap my head around just how advanced that system must be. One thing that I wanted to bring up, when I look at people who are susceptible to fraud, and I suppose everybody is, but I understand that there is some abuse specifically among the elderly, that they're particularly susceptible. Can you talk a little bit about elder abuse and as well as gift card fraud?
Yeah, actually, they're very closely correlated at this point. One of the biggest avenues for taking advantage of elderly at this point is the fraudsters are very adept at convincing the elderly to purchase gift cards for them, and they're high-value gift cards, which they can then monetize. If they can get a gift card leveraging someone's credit card information or stolen credentials, then they can convert that to cash. They can get online, sell a $100 gift card for $75, and since they have no cost of goods sold, it's all upside, it's all profit for them. So what the merchants that we protect are doing is leveraging the technology that we provide them back, the responses that we provide them back within 250 milliseconds to evaluate those high gift card purchases in order to ascertain if this is something that that they ought to be paying closer attention to. So perhaps the same individuals buying a bunch of gift cards, or the gift cards you've got 1,100 gift cards being sent to the same address or something like that. So we've been able to help them evaluate a large number of transactions and ultimately at the end of the day protect not just the elderly but anybody who they've been able to convince to buy gift cards for them so they can convert them into cash quickly.
So you're analyzing those transactions in real time and catching them as they happen and hopefully preventing them, if I understand correctly.
That's correct.
All right. So tell me as we wrap up here, tell the Joe Q consumer what they can do to protect themselves right now. What's the number one thing that they could do to protect themselves from being taken advantage of in this particular modern issue?
Honestly, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. If you don't know the person who's asking you for help personally and can't confirm that it's actually them, then just don't do it. A lot of it boils down to common sense. If your granddaughter's asking you to buy her a gift card to help her out, then confirm that it's your granddaughter by calling her on her cell phone, etc. It's pretty remarkable at how adept these folks are at spoofing an individual's voice or their persona.
Right. Also, kind of keeping things at the consumer level. I know that, my bank or credit union occasionally will catch something that looks a little bit odd, maybe put my card on hold and contact me. And that's great, but I don't feel like it's a very bulletproof system necessarily.
Right.
For the consumer, would you say that credit monitoring services are an essential tool these days? Perhaps not really something that should be optional, but something you should take a little more seriously?
I can only speak for myself. I have it for me and for my minor children because it's very easy to wreck a kid's otherwise pristine credit history. They've got a pristine history. Somebody can take over their persona and they don't find out about it till they apply for college. So I've got credit monitoring on my 12-year-old and my 14-year-old and have had it for 4 years, just because I don't want them to have to deal with that when they turn 18, 19 and find out that somebody's already taken advantage of them.
Wow, I got to be honest with you, I hadn't even thought about that. So, I mean, that's really, really great advice. Well, listen, Brett, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us about this essential information, sharing with our viewers. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
All right. Well, folks, we're about an hour into our show, and it's nowhere near being done. It's Friday, and that means that it's time for one of our favorite segments. It's Tech Briefs with Flipboard's technology editor, Ken Yeung, coming right up. There's a lot that had happened over the course of the week, and we're going to break down the tech news for you and tell you why it matters. So stick around, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Caleb Dennison. We're about to bring in Ken Yeung, the technology editor at Flipboard. But before we do, today's episode of Tech Briefs is brought to you by SaneBox. SaneBox is an amazing email management system that will make your life easier by managing and organizing your existing email accounts. Let the AI of the Sane Reminders feature help you to reply to the emails you need to respond to, while at the same time uncluttering your inbox with the Sane Black Hole. Get a free 2-week trial and a $25 credit by visiting sanebox.com/digital trends today. That's SANEBOX.com/digital trends to get that great discount and free trial. Now, with that, Ken Yeung from Flipboard joins us from his offices in San Francisco. Is that right, Ken?
Close enough. It's in Redwood City, so we're in the San Francisco Bay Area.
I got you. Okay, sorry about that. I knew you were down there somewhere in that.
It's close enough. It's all the same.
So, man, typically it's kind of a slow news time because, we've gotten through Black Friday and Cyber Monday. CES is around the corner. Usually tech companies are fairly quiet. That has not been the case this week. As you know very well, Qualcomm has had their Snapdragon event going on in Maui. That's where Greg is right now. He's having a really tough time of it, I'm sure. And there was some interesting news that came out of there. I guess the biggest one, we talked about their AR platform a little bit earlier. And we're going to get into that again. But the Snapdragon 865 chip was announced, and it seems to bring some legitimately real features that we can expect to see in smartphones in the future. What do you think about where 5G and AI is going right now?
So I think with you're right. December is typically a slow news month, but there's certainly been no shortage of it, especially in this consolidated month with the Thanksgiving holiday coming in early. But I think what Qualcomm's doing is setting up what CES is going to be, what's going to headline CES next month. So yeah, Qualcomm wants to really usher in 5G. You start to see a lot of carriers in the US. You have Verizon, you have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint all launching some iteration of a 5G network. And so now Qualcomm wants to do its part in saying, look, we have these high powered chips that are going to be in not only your phones, but any device that you can possibly think of to really bring 5G to fruition. Right now, 5G is very, nobody really can see the true benefit of 5G. I mean, there's a lot of hype around what could be done. I think for most consumers, what they envision in terms of 5G is that it's going to be faster than 4G, but are they really going to recognize, be able to notice that big of a difference in terms of a speed? So I think with Qualcomm's new 865 and there's, I believe, the 765 chip, you're going to start to see more of these type of innovations start to come into our devices over the next couple of years. Last year at CES, you started, there's a lot of hype around it, a lot of introduction saying, this is what we're going to be doing. You're starting to see more 5G phones. And that's true to form. You're going to see. We saw quite a few 5G phones launch this year, but I don't think people don't recognize the potential about it. And also with that 5G, Qualcomm wanted to really emphasize the potential for how it improves AI. And the faster your computing power, the faster the AI can compute things and provide you services and knowledge at rates that you may not have been expecting before.
Yeah.
And so it'd be interesting to see where that comes through.
Yeah, it's time for the rubber to start hitting the road. I mean, if I look back at CES earlier this year, it was a lot of promise around what could be done when 5G got here. So we saw a lot of different, from autonomous vehicle technology to even televisions, what could be done with 5G. The promise of 5G is coming. Here's what we're going to use it for. Now we need to actually start seeing that come together. This new Snapdragon chip embodies a lot of that. As we said, 5G is a big part of that, AI, AR. Also, better battery life. It's just more efficient, which is good news because, it's going to be doing a lot of processing. So we don't want to see battery life go down as our devices are doing more. I guess there's a new fingerprint sensor as well, which is interesting. So we'll see what that looks like when it starts making it into devices. But just because we have the devices and the chip to run it, we aren't there yet. We need a network to run it over. And I feel like the 5G network situation is kind of I don't know, dodgy, tenuous right now. But T-Mobile did do a 5G nationwide launch, and I want to get your read on that. I'm kind of taking the temperature of 5G because is it really 5G? Is it more like AT&T's like 5GE, which isn't really 5G? What's going on with T-Mobile's launch here?
So I'm kind of personally I'm kind of excited about T-Mobile's 5G rollout. I mean, I'm a T-Mobile customer, but I mean the downside is that T-Mobile only has 2 phones that are 5G enabled, and unfortunately, I don't want to pay that much for 5G right now, especially when again, nobody like what are consumers really going to experience in terms of 5G? I mean, right now it's like, oh, we're watching this video now, and you see like this marketing hype behind it, and we're promised like the a treasure trove of capabilities, but realistically, are we actually going to be seeing that now, or we're going to start seeing that maybe in 2022 or 2023 or whatever? I think by Qualcomm's estimates, I believe it's like over 1 billion phones will be out there. They're estimating over 1 billion phones to be 5G enabled within, I believe, within 2022 or something like that. I believe that was the latest stat. So I think with T-Mobile, they're getting it out there. But I think the caveat here is this going to be something that's going to be widely available for those that don't live near a cell tower, a 5G cell tower? Also, how drastic, how massive of a speed impact are you going to see throughout the nation? Is it truly nationwide, or are there going to be millions without access to this kind of type of thing? And if you recall, with the lawsuit that states have filed against T-Mobile and Sprint, that merger, T-Mobile has made a claim that saying, look, in order for 5G to really have an impact, this Sprint merger needs to go through. So if that merger doesn't go through for some reason, what could impact this 5G rollout? And so, I mean, there's certainly a lot of caveats with what T-Mobile's doing.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to ask you about the Sprint merger. It seems like that is a linchpin to this whole thing, and if it falls through, T-Mobile is going to be hurting for certain. So I think we can both agree that with the excitement and the hype that's around it, 5G is still in its nascent days. But I do have to say the fact that Niantic, the company that made Pokemon Go, for instance, is getting into making AR glasses. They've got this partnership going with Qualcomm right now. Qualcomm announced this XR AR platform, and it seems like, to me, there's some real movement in AR about to happen here. What do you think?
So Qualcomm, going back to the Snapdragon Summit, they needed to really tout 5G. Like they just them building out new chips isn't going to do enough. They need to actually get that in the hands of developers and product folks. And so not only are they doing with Niantic, what you referenced, but they also have announced a slate of partnerships, including with Google, in terms of helping you to store your driver's license information on your phone securely. But I think what people really would be interested in is the Niantic tie-in. And look, Pokemon Go was a hit. I still see people playing it. People on a bus with 2 phones playing Pokemon Go. I mean, go figure. I think I'd just be happy, with a Pikachu or a Snorlax or something like that, and just be done with it. But I think with Pokemon Go, with Niantic, I think Niantic's whole thing is its whole bread and butter is the AR world. This augmented reality, this mixed reality, and what better way to really experience that than with wearable devices or an augmented glasses or anything like that. Sure, you can do it with your phone, but I mean, it makes it a little bit more seamless to have these type of things. And Pokemon and Niantic's not the only one that's been toying around with AR glasses. But I think also, if you recall, Facebook said that they're working on something like that. Google has toyed with that with very, very disastrous results. And of course, you have Snapchat with their spectacles to a certain degree. But I think with consumers, like Qualcomm's partnership with a brand that has a lot of consumer appeal is going to be a pretty interesting thing, and that could really cut through the confusion about what AR glasses are, and hopefully usher a new mainstream medium. So who knows what's going to happen with that? And if you recall, Magic Leap also famously announced that they would have some sort of an AR mixed reality headset. That still hasn't been fully revealed yet. I mean, they were saying that they were expecting, I believe, over 100,000 shipments. And then I believe the information published a study today saying that, I believe 6,000 units were ultimately sold. So they are far behind the curve in terms of making this mainstream. I think it's still early days for AR glasses.
Yeah, definitely early days, but I feel like Niantic was kind of held back by the fact that the phone was their only platform. With the new chip that's coming out and the opening up of this platform, or at least the partnership between Niantic and Qualcomm, I think that their AR glasses have a really good shot at becoming a reality sooner than later. So hopefully we're going to see some big movement there, and it can be less of a pie in the sky thing and a little bit more practical of a product. And also, Niantic will probably make it fun. We got to wrap up really quick here, Ken, but I do want to bring up Larry Page and Sergey Brin stepped down from Google and also Alphabet, handing over the keys to Sundar Pichai. What are the implications on this, real quick?
So Google will probably streamline everything now with one leader running the biggest business unit of Alphabet, and now also hedging its bets with everything else, including with Google X and everything like that. The fact that what analysts and other journalists are saying in terms of Larry and Sergey's departure is that, look, they are still the majority shareholder of the company. They do not have day-to-day management anymore, but with them stepping away from having an official role, but still a majority shareholder, there's a lack of accountability there. Like Sundar, he's had a very great rise to the top echelon of the company, but he still has a lot of obstacles to overcome, especially with dealing with the antitrust and regulation. Elizabeth Warren chimed in as soon as Larry announced he was stepping down and Sundar was taking over. So this is going to be very interesting to see how he handles that. It'll be very interesting how he overcomes, how he really reinvigorates the Google workforce, especially after the firing of a few employee advocates who spoke out against the company over certain issues there. So I think that Google and Alphabet have a lot to overcome. This is a great step forward, but there's a lot to read in between the tea leaves here.
Yeah, definitely. Sundar Pichai has his work cut out for him, so we'll have to see how he handles that. Ken Yeung, technology editor at Flipboard, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate your time today.
No worries. Great to have me. Great to be here.
You bet. All right. Well, we've got more coming at you shortly. After a quick break, we're going to bring in Jack Bishop, the Chief Creative Officer at America's Test Kitchen. Seriously, people, I could not be more excited. I'm a big, big fan. We're going to be talking about how modern kitchen gadgets and kitchen tech are transforming the way we cook at home. Digital Trends Live will be back in just one tick of your egg timer. Welcome back, everybody, to Digital Trends Live. I'm Caleb Dennison, and as I just mentioned, I'm very excited for this next segment. We're bringing in Jack Bishop, Chief Creative Officer at America's Test Kitchen. Jack, welcome to the show.
Hey, Caleb. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So I'm a big America's Test Kitchen fan. I'll put that out there right now. I am also an avid home cook, and I'm very, very into kitchen gadgets. So I'm interested to talk to you about this stuff. I know that I've witnessed a lot of changes in kitchen gadgets, especially around internet connectivity. So can you tell me a little bit about how bringing the Internet of Things, a term I really hate, but that's what's going on, right? We're getting a lot of internet-connected devices. What is that allowing home cooks to do today that they couldn't do before?
So it's some amazing stuff and some absolutely ridiculous stuff. I'm going to start with the amazing things. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's start with the good stuff first.
I love the idea of an app that allows me to turn on my coffee maker while I'm still in bed. I don't know what time I'm going to get up. I don't want to necessarily program it for a certain time, but the idea of making coffee from bed, okay, sign me up for that. My colleagues here, we test hundreds of pieces of equipment a year, and it was one of those ones that was super popular. We actually brought the coffee maker home and the connected app, and we're like, now this is worth owning. And so, I think there's some technology that's allowing us to do things we would normally do and just do it better. So we love sous vide, and a lot of those, the best devices are you're running them off of your app. It allows you more flexibility and more precision, which there's very few things that do both of those things in the kitchen. Usually you get more precise and you get less flexible, or you get more flexibility and less precision. But sous vide, which immersion circulators allow you to cook eggs, meat, beans, even vegetables more precisely with more flexibility. And it's great to do it all from your phone.
I agree. Having that kind of remote control, it can be really, really handy. And one example I think of is, and I'll tell you right now, I don't burn anything in my kitchen ever. I sear stuff though. When I'm searing a steak, I make a lot of smoke, and I love the fact that I can turn off my smoke alarm. Nest has this particular feature where you can disable it. You don't have to go over there and wave the towel in front of the thing and try and calm things down. You can just turn it off. It's great.
Yeah, no, we recently just tested that, and it's super, because getting out the ladder, by the time you get the ladder, you find it, you get up on the ladder to turn off your smoke alarm. Way better to do it from a phone. We love the home devices, Alexa, because, rather than winging it when you're making a substitution, to be able to, ask for advice. Hey, I don't have any buttermilk. What's the best substitute for that? It's a great way to help in the kitchen, and it really reduces people making stupid mistakes, using baking powder in place of baking soda, which probably is not going to work for you.
I actually have a personal story there. When I was 11, I made these muffin surprises. They were muffins with jelly inside, and I used baking soda instead of baking powder. And not only were they the saltiest things I've ever put in my mouth, but also it turned the grape jelly green. It was a day in Caleb's cooking history that will never be forgotten. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Also, I think that those smart assistants are great for doing conversions between cups and tablespoons and teaspoons and what have you. So those are genuinely helpful. Now you mentioned there's some not so helpful stuff out there, and I feel like there are companies that don't have any experience with cooking that are developing devices. They're trying. Maybe they sound good on paper, but in reality they don't actually work all that well. Can you give us some examples that you've run into?
Yeah, two things in the thermometer land. So one that has presets. So the notion is you don't know what temperature you should be cooking your turkey to. Well, the problem is it's put the wrong presets in. That they're based on safety, meaning we want zero chance of anyone, getting sick, but not about palatability. So for instance, it's going to cook your steak to 150 degrees. Well, I actually like my steak 125, meaning it's medium rare. And so, if you don't notice that, you've got really safe food, but not necessarily really delicious food. We also had a lot of problems with these remote barbecue thermometers. Great idea, But then if you walked too far away from the grill, it would lose the connection and wouldn't actually let you know that you had lost the connection. So meanwhile, you're incinerating, those chicken breasts, and you have no idea there's a raging fire going on in your grill because the app has actually gone out of range. And you have no idea that you are sitting too far away from the grill.
Yeah, I won't mention the brand, but I have an electric smoker that this came out when internet connectivity on these devices was first a thing. It has no physical control buttons at all. If it's not connected to the internet, it's completely worthless. And going through the app to get it connected and then try and it's just, it's not the great. What else is just basically worthless besides those probe thermometers that you mentioned?
Well, I think in a sort of middle category is stuff that locks you into an ecosystem that you don't necessarily want to sign up for. So I think there's a lot of these like smart ovens and all-in-one cooking devices, some of them $1,000, $2,000. And we've tested a fair number of them, and they work pretty well for the preset recipes or the food that you may need to go to buy to put in these ovens. But if you try to make your favorite recipe, your mother's recipe, a family recipe, good luck trying to hack the thing to, make something that's a family favorite. It's so complicated that basically if you're going to buy this device, of course, this is probably the way the manufacturers are intending it, that you basically have to sign up to follow all of their rules or whether buying all of their food. And so, I want something that's going to allow me maximum flexibility. So there's some of these ovens. We tested one called the June that's actually really great. I mean, it has a camera that takes pictures of the food and then adjusts the temperature and the controls based on what the camera is seeing is happening to your food. Well, that's pretty smart, and allows you not only to use preset recipes, but your own recipes. And so that's the kind of flexibility I want in the kitchen.
That's a great example of, I love the June oven versus something like the Tovala, which, as you mentioned, locks you into an ecosystem. And let's not forget that the smart home appliances have to connect through a hub often, and that hub is very locked into its own little ecosystem, so you're basically compounding the conundrum. It's not a lot of fun. We're about out of time here, but can you please tell me if somebody wants to get a read on whether a smart kitchen appliance or any other smart device for the kitchen is a good idea or a bad idea, where would you tell them to go?
Well, I would come to americastestkitchen.com and read our reviews. We're pretty honest. And if it's great, we're going to tell you it's great and you can believe that it's going to work. I mean, we're cooks first and foremost. So we only care about technology if it makes things better in the kitchen. Tech for the sake of tech, no thanks. So we review this stuff, and if we think it's worthless, we're going to tell you, save your $1,000.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jack. I really appreciate your time. We very much agree with you that tech for the sake of tech's sake is really not good for anybody at all, especially when it's about food and in your kitchen. So thanks for taking some time to be on Digital Trends Live today.
Thanks, Caleb.
All right. Well, we're wrapping up here pretty soon, but we've got one more killer segment coming up, and that's Between the Streams with Ryan Juanita and what you should be watching or paying attention to in entertainment. Something tells me a certain baby or the child might be involved. I mean, how can it not right now? We'll be right back with all that and more on Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Caleb Dennison, joined now by Mr. Ryan Juanita. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing well, man.
This is going to be a fun time here because there's a lot going on in entertainment and some strange things kind of happening right now. You were just telling me as you walked in that Amazon pulled The Boys Season 2 trailer. What is happening there?
Yeah, we got a Boys Season 2 trailer on YouTube, which we kind of thought it's more of a teaser than a trailer. We kind of thought that was early to be getting it. If you've watched this series, it's pretty gory. We're putting it on here, so maybe if you're at work,
look away.
Turn
if you're
your
a little
screen,
bit
or if you're squeamish, look away. But yeah, so pretty much right after they pulled, or they put it on YouTube, it was pulled. So now we just have it from a tweet. Not sure why they pulled it. Wondering if it was because of the gore and they didn't, mark it as a red band trailer. I don't know. But it's got me excited. I really love this show. It's weird and it's dirty and bloody, but in all the right ways for me. Really interesting characters and pretty great acting across the board, I think. And it's just that great subversion of the saturation that we've had with superheroes. So it's really a necessary show, I think, to sort of do something different with superheroes, and it does it in a fun way.
I'm excited to hear that. I have not gotten to check this show out yet.
Yeah.
And that endorsement is pretty much all I need from Ryan Juanita. Fantastic. So, not sure where that trailer went. Do you think maybe they'll bring it back at some point?
I assume so. I mean, I think maybe they'll tone it down. I don't know. People know what this show is if they've seen it, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that don't know. So it's got a lot of sexual gratuity. It's got a lot of violence. And basically the breakdown is there are 7 supers that are being controlled by this company that is sort of like Disney gone bad, but they're actual superheroes. And then there are these other people who have been affected by them, and they're out to get them, led by Carl Urban and a well-acted Jack Quaid, who is playing this sort of our vicarious character, Huey. He kind of comes into this thing from a tragedy that happens, and their whole job is to track down these supers and either put them out of commission or try to stop them from doing the mayhem that they're creating. And so it's just a really interesting way an interesting take on the whole superhero.
Sounds like I need to get going on season 1. When is season 2 supposed to come out?
We actually don't know exactly when. Sometime in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a very exciting trailer that came out recently. Black Widow is going down. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, so Black Widow, people who saw the most recent Avengers movie may wonder about this movie. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but basically what this is going to be is sort of a flashback. I believe it's in between Civil War when some of the Avengers have to go underground.
Okay, so it's not an origin story.
It is not an origin story, although you will, I think, get flashbacks to the origin.
Okay.
But the story takes place in between Civil War and the most recent Avengers Avengers Adventures. That's a weird way to say that. But yeah, so it's basically following Natasha Romanoff, who is played by the lovely Scarlett Johansson, and
Scarlett.
What we're going to see here is probably a passing of the torch to this new up-and-coming actress, Florence Pugh, who plays Yelena Belova, who is sort of the one who takes up the mantle in the comic books.
Right.
I'm not telling you anything the comic books haven't told you, but again, there's only so much you can do with the current Black Widow because of some things that happened in Avengers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll stay away from the spoilers, right?
Right, but there are some other fun things. David Harbour is playing.
I was going to say, David Harbour from Stranger Things is in here.
And I'm excited. He's playing the Red Guardian, who is sort of, as I understand it, again, I haven't read all these comics, but as I understand it, he's basically the Captain America, the Russian version of Captain America, or they tried to make him that.
Okay.
But these 3 are going to team up also with Rachel Weisz's character, who plays a character called Iron Maiden, who is another sort of Russian character in this whole thing so just to explain the Black Widows, they're basically trained, sort of like La Femme Nikita. Do you remember that movie?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's what the Black Widows are. They're trained assassins, sort of cult-trained assassins, and there are many of them. The Black Widow that we know in the comics is just one of many who've been trained for this stuff. So that's it's sort of a spy movie. It's got kind of a Civil War, sort of a Winter Soldier vibe, I should say. It looks like it's going to have a lot of practical action, so I'm excited for it.
So David Harbour, Russian
David Harbour is doing a Russian accent and being kind of like Thor dad bod thing going on.
Right after what happened, you know, at the end of Stranger Things 3, no more spoilers.
I know, so that's the ironic thing. It's like, so what happened in Stranger Things 3, and now he's playing a Russian.
Totally unrelated, I'm sure.
It's weird. It is weird.
All right.
I love me some David Harbour.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed watching him as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing Black Widow come out. I'm just kind of into the Marvel movies in general. I never read the comics.
They're fairly popular.
Yeah, you know, they're fun.
They're kind of a thing.
They're fun. They're kind of a big deal. Speaking of big deals, let's address the non-elephant in the room, Baby Yoda, a.k.a. the child. How did this happen, dude? I mean, I know that it's the Mandalorian is involved, but I haven't seen the Mandalorian yet.
Oh, well then,
I haven't watched any of it,
okay.
so...
well, think of the cutest puppy you've ever seen, and then put it in a Yoda body.
It's basically taking over the internet right now.
It's just the cutest, and really, if you haven't seen, well, there's one new episode out today that I haven't seen, but if you haven't seen episode 4, that's really where the cuteness factor gets taken to, you know,
new
1,000.
Okay.
It's insane. We've got the new meme with the Baby Yoda drinking soup, which is they're saying it's going to threaten to take out the Kermit meme when he's drinking tea.
Oh my goodness.
That's how popular it is, and yeah. So Baby Yoda is taking over the internet, and The Mandalorian's just fantastic.
I was going to ask you about that because it seemed like when it first started, the reviews were a little bit mixed.
Yeah.
Some people really liked it. Some people were like, oh, what a failure. And but it seems like things are progressing. I mean, as always with the first season of any show, it can be a little bit of a rocky start. Sounds like that's kind of what happened here.
Well, there's some weird things about it. The weirdest thing for me is, this isn't much of a spoiler, but it can go overboard on the nostalgia to the point where there's a scene on an ice world where there's a speeder that looks just like the one that Luke had, and there's no top, and we're all going, it is like really cold outside. This is the future. Why don't you have tops on your vehicles? Is that just to be nostalgic? There's this whole actual article by Jalopnik where they talk about, shouldn't there be a third party that puts lids on these things or something? Like, this is the future. So I think it can go a little overboard on the nostalgia, but I really enjoy it. It really has the Western vibe. It has the samurai vibe to it. And I think of each episode of less of a through line, more like a featurette or like a vignette. It really is kind of its own thing, even though there is a through story. And yeah, the whole idea of the Baby Yoda coming into the picture is actually, Baby as Yoda. Chris Gates had one of our writers had very well pointed out, it actually takes from an old samurai story where there's a guy who runs around with a young baby on like a baby born, like kicking ass all over the place. And so it really like borrows from a lot of cool things, but I think it does it in a really cool way.
Mikey Solis says it's just a green mogwai.
Yeah, that is true. You know what? I was just thinking about this because I was thinking about how much I loved, you know, the little guy back in the day from Gremlins.
From Gremlins.
Yeah. So I had a little, you know, stuffed animal of that and everything.
Speaking of which, Baby Yoda merch is coming, but not for a while. I think they I can't believe that they weren't prepared for this. How did they not see this coming? There should be Baby Yoda plushies right now. You should have Baby Yoda bobbleheads.
Yes.
And you know, obviously, the T-shirts that they've put out there are like somebody made them in their backyard.
Well, that's what it is.
They're
called
stupid.
Etsy and Redbubble, and yeah, it really is odd that Disney wasn't on this because they are kind of the kings of merchandise.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, somebody failed. Somebody needs to be fired over that, if you ask me.
But yeah, no, Baby Yoda is totally the new Gizmo, but even cuter maybe. It's pretty ridiculous.
Fantastic. Well, we got time for one more, and the new Bond trailer's out. James Bond.
Yeah.
Not 007 though. What's going on?
Yeah, I think he's retired again. Like, he keeps doing that. This movie reminds me more Skyfall than Spectre, which I think is a good thing. And it seems like it's going to be his last ride. They like called him in for one last battle, but that was kind of what it seemed like it was going to be for Skyfall. And you know, if you've been reading behind the scenes on this at all, Daniel Craig has been saying he doesn't want to play Bond for like
forever.
3 movies.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point he was quoted as saying, "I'd rather slit my wrist than play Bond again."
Ooh. Goodness.
But they offered him some outrageous amount of money, so that's kind of suspect, but he's a great actor. I really like this trailer. I think it looks really fun. I love that there's movies that still use practical effects pretty heavily, and I don't know, I'm just always up for a Bond ride.
Yeah.
I think this looks really fun. Yeah, it looks like some of the old bad guys from Spectre are going to be here, including Christoph Waltz, and then of course we get the new bad guy, Rami Malek, and he's a fantastic actor. So I'm in.
For sure.
I'm in on this one.
And who's playing the new 007 again?
There is a new, I don't know if she's 007, but it is, I think her name is Lashana Lynch.
Okay.
And she's playing Nomi, who is a 00 agent. She was actually in Captain Marvel.
Okay, that's where I recognize her from. All right.
She was the friend pilot in Captain Marvel.
Honestly, when it was an Alfa Romeo or something like that, the guns come out of the headlights and he just spins a cookie and starts shooting everybody up.
It's the Aston Martin, but yes.
It's Aston Martin, thank you, thank you. I'm not a car guy.
No, it's fine.
No, that had me though, right there.
Yeah.
Totally worth
it looks
sweet.
See. He's got like mini guns on the headlights and he does a Brody. Yeah, it's
I'm going to go see that movie.
I'm into it.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
one of the best segments that we do here on Digital Trends Live, and super, super fun.
Well,
that's it for Digital Trends Live this week. On Monday, much to my chagrin, Greg Nibbler will be back in this sheet hosting this show. It's been a pleasure discussing the breaking tech topics with you all this week, and I'll be back for my regular TV discussions on Thursdays. I want to say real quick, I want to thank Mikey, Jake, Kelsey, Jess, for making this whole process really easy for me, making me look great. I definitely don't do this naturally. Thank you for having me. It's been a really good time. We have some great guests next week. Famed electric automaker Henrik Fisker will be joining the show to discuss their latest Fisker e-motion supercar and the development of their $40,000 electric SUV. If that happens, I'm totally for it. And Pavi I knew I was going to do this. Pavi Diamani. I can say it 5 times fast, Diamani. Sorry, Pavi, I love you. We'll be live on location at the headquarters of Bell Helicopters talking about the future of personal flight with the EVP of Bell, Michael Thacker. That helicopter was at CES last year, and it was stinking amazing, so I can't wait to see that. Those guests and more, plus all the latest breaking technology news, will be covering our favorite tech of 2019. Tune in at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, wherever you consume content. For Digital Trends, I'm Caleb Dennison. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.